The morning sun was just starting to rise over the Earth colony when something unusual happened. In the sky, a strange object appeared. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. It wasn't a plane, and it wasn't a meteor. It was something different. The object came down slowly, with a soft hum filling the air. It landed in the middle of the colony's open field, kicking up dust and causing the nearby buildings to shake slightly. People gathered around, staring up in wonder and fear, unsure of what to expect. The door of the ship slowly opened, and a figure stepped out. At first, no one could believe their eyes. She was tall, much taller than any human, and her skin had a strange glow, almost like it was lit from the inside. Her hair shimmered in silver and gold, falling around her shoulders in soft waves. But what really caught everyone's attention were her eyes. They were large, wide, and shimmered with the colors of the stars. She was beautiful, alien, but beautiful. This was Celia, an ambassador from the Valar, a peaceful alien species that had traveled across the stars to meet humanity. Celia had come to Earth to learn about humans, but she had no idea how the humans would react to her. The humans, though curious, didn't know how to react either. Some of the soldiers around the colony held their weapons tightly, nervous about what might happen. But the commander, a man named Captain Matthews, stepped forward. He gave a quick signal to his soldiers, telling them to lower their weapons. They didn't know if Celia was a threat, but he was willing to give her a chance. Celia moved toward the group slowly, her long, graceful steps making her seem almost otherworldly. As she reached the gathered humans, she spoke in a voice that was soft, but carried perfectly in the air, almost like it had its own music. "I come in peace," she said in perfect English, though her accent was unlike anything the humans had ever heard. Captain Matthews, still unsure, stepped forward. "We didn't expect visitors," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Can you tell us who you are and why you're here?" Celia nodded, her eyes locking onto his. "I am Celia, ambassador of the Valar. We have traveled many light years to meet your kind. We want to learn about humans, your planet, and share knowledge between our peoples." There was a moment of silence. The humans looked at each other, still unsure of what to make of this. Captain Matthews glanced at the other officers and then back at Celia. "I suppose we can start with introductions," he said. "But first, what exactly are you offering?" Celia smiled gently, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "I bring knowledge, healing, and a gift," she said. "One of my people's abilities is the gift of regeneration through my milk. It can heal injuries, ease pain, and provide nourishment. I offer it to you." The humans looked at each other, confused and curious. Milk? Healing milk. This was something entirely new to them. They had never heard of such a thing. But the more they thought about it, the more they realized how important it could be. If this milk could heal wounds or help those who were sick, it could change everything for humanity. "I'll need to speak with my team," Captain Matthews said, trying to hide his excitement. "This is a big decision, but we appreciate your honesty." Celia nodded, understanding. She didn't expect the humans to trust her immediately. In fact, she had expected fear. After all, how could they not be afraid of an alien who looked so different? She had prepared herself for the fear, for the questions, for the suspicion. But what she hadn't prepared for was the curiosity. The humans were looking at her not with hate, but with curiosity. And that, in itself, was a small victory. As the humans discussed among themselves, Celia stood still, her eyes scanning the crowd. She noticed the way some of the women looked at her with interest, while the men seemed more skeptical. She couldn't blame them. Her people were known for their beauty, but she was still a stranger to them. To most humans, anything alien was a threat, a danger to be destroyed. But Celia wasn't a threat. She had come here to build bridges, not walls. She wanted to learn, to help. The milk she offered was just a small part of the gifts her people had to offer. If the humans accepted her, If they gave her a chance, she would teach them about her culture and her people. And maybe, just maybe, they would learn to trust her. When the humans finally turned back to her, Captain Matthews spoke. "We're willing to listen. If your milk can truly heal, we'll allow you to share it. But we need to understand more about it. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." Zelia's smile grew wider. "Of course, I will answer any questions you have. But first, I must tell you one thing." She paused, looking each of them in the eyes. "This gift is not just a gift. It is a part of who I am. I hope you will respect that." Captain Matthews nodded. "We will." And just like that, the first meeting between humans and the Valar had begun. Neither side knew what the future held, but for the first time, they both felt that something new, something special, was about to happen. The milk and its secrets. The sun had barely risen the next day when the humans began their first real test of Zelia's gift. After the surprising meeting with the Valar ambassador, Captain Matthews had decided to allow the scientists to study the alien milk. The crew was still unsure what to think of the strange substance, but they couldn't ignore its potential. Dr. Jared Williams, the lead scientist, stood in the lab, his hands nervously adjusting his glasses. He had never studied anything like this before. His mind raced with questions. Could this milk really heal? Could it be the breakthrough humanity had been waiting for? Or was it all just a trick? Zelia had agreed to help. She was calm, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. She wanted to help the humans, but she also knew they would be examining her body. It wasn't something she enjoyed, but she understood it was necessary. After all, they had to know if her milk was truly as powerful as she claimed. The room was quiet, except for the sound of the equipment buzzing and beeping. A small metal container held a sample of Zelia's milk, glowing faintly in the soft light. Dr. Jared carefully approached the container, his eyes filled with both excitement and doubt. "Are you sure about this?" One of the other scientists, Dr. Clara Mills, asked quietly. "It's different from anything we've seen before." Dr. Jared nodded, looking at Zelia. "It's the only way to know if it's real," he said softly. "We need to understand how it works." Zelia nodded. "I understand," she said in her smooth voice. "I trust you." Dr. Jared carefully opened the container. As the lid lifted, a soft, warm glow filled the room. The milk inside shimmered with colors, like liquid light. He couldn't help but stare at it, mesmerized. It wasn't like any milk he had ever seen. It looked almost magical. "Let's begin," he said, trying to keep his excitement in check. The first test was simple. They placed a small amount of the milk on a wound, a scrape on one of the human volunteers. The volunteers were nervous, but they trusted Dr. Jared. They watched as the milk made contact with the wound. To everyone's surprise, the wound began to close within seconds. It was as if the skin was knitting itself back together. The pain seemed to vanish instantly. The volunteer gasped, touching the healed skin in disbelief. "It's gone. The pain, the wound, it's completely healed." The room went silent for a moment, then erupted into chatter. Dr. Jared stood still, his mouth hanging open. This wasn't just healing, it was something more. The skin wasn't just repaired, it was better than before. It was as though the body had been given a fresh start. That can't be possible," Dr. Mills whispered, staring at the healed skin. "This is beyond anything we've ever seen." Zelia stood quietly by, watching the humans' reactions. She knew they would be shocked. To her, this was normal. Her people had used this ability for generations to heal and protect their own. But she knew that the humans had never encountered anything like this. She could see their fear mixed with wonder. As the tests continued, the humans began to understand that the milk was not only healing injuries, but also boosting energy. They gave small samples to volunteers who had been feeling tired or ill. Within minutes, they were feeling better, stronger, more alert. Some even felt more youthful, as though the milk was reversing the effects of age. It was as if their bodies were being renewed with every drop. But while the humans were amazed, Celia felt uncomfortable. She hadn't expected the humans to react this way. They were drinking her milk like it was a simple medicine, a quick fix to their problems. To her, it was a sacred part of her being. It wasn't just something to be used, but something to be shared with care. Dr. Jared noticed the quiet sadness in her eyes and paused. "Zelia," he said gently, "are you okay? You don't have to stay here if this is too much." Zelia forced a small smile. "I'm fine," she said softly. I didn't expect so much attention. But I understand. You need to know everything." Dr. Jared nodded, sensing her discomfort. "We do, but we'll try to be respectful. This is important, but we won't forget your trust in us." Celia looked at him, her eyes shining. "Thank you, Dr. Jared. I know you mean well." The tests went on for hours. The more they tested, the more they discovered about the milk's strange properties. It didn't just heal. It enhanced the human body in ways they couldn't fully explain. It was clear that this milk could change the future of medicine. If they could replicate its effects, humanity could find cures for diseases, end suffering, and even slow down the aging process. But as the day wore on, Dr. Jared couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. The milk was powerful, but it wasn't just a science experiment. It was a gift that came from someone, not something. Zelia watched him, sensing his inner conflict. She had known that humans would be fascinated by her milk, but she hoped they would understand its deeper meaning. She wanted them to see it as more than just a cure. It was part of who she was, part of her people's history and culture. When the last test was finished, Dr. Jared looked up at her. "Zelia, I think we've only scratched the surface of what your milk can do. But I also think we need to approach this more carefully. It's not just a tool. It's part of you." Zelia nodded, relieved. "Yes, I'm glad you understand." The humans had learned a lot that day, but they also knew they had just begun to unlock the secrets of the Valar. Zelia's milk was far more than they had expected, and it held mysteries that would take time to understand. Unexpected attraction. The days following the tests were filled with activity. The humans were fascinated by the results of Celia's milk. They could see the potential it held, not just for medicine, but for the future of humanity. But while everyone was focused on the science, there was something else growing in the background, a quiet connection between Celia and Dr. Jared. At first, Dr. Jared had only seen Celia as an alien, a subject to study. But the more time he spent with her, the more he began to see her as a person. He noticed the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her people. He saw how gentle and thoughtful she was, even though she had every reason to be distant. Despite the strange situation, she had a kindness that made him feel at ease. One evening, after another long day of experiments, Dr. Jared found himself standing in the hallway outside Celia's quarters. He had been thinking about her a lot lately, but it wasn't just her alien beauty that caught his attention. It was her quiet strength, her willingness to share something so personal, even though it was hard for her. He admired her courage. He knocked on her door softly. After a moment, the door opened, and Celia stood there, her long, glowing hair cascading around her shoulders. She was wearing a simple robe, and her eyes softened when she saw him. "Dr. Jared," she said with a smile, "what brings you here?" He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to say. He wasn't sure why he had come. Maybe it was to check on her after the long tests. Maybe it was because he wanted to talk, to know more about her. "I just wanted to see how you're doing," he said finally, his voice a little softer than he intended. "The tests went well today, but I wanted to make sure you're okay." Zelia raised an eyebrow. "I'm fine," she replied, "but I appreciate you checking on me." The tests were a lot to handle, but they were necessary. Dr. Jared nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. "I know. It's just, sometimes I forget how hard this must be for you." You've shared something so personal with us." Zelia smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her expression. "It's not easy," she admitted, "but I came here to help. I want to share my knowledge. I want to build a bridge between our people. That's why I'm here." Dr. Jared's heart softened. He hadn't realized how much weight Celia carried on her shoulders. She wasn't just an ambassador. She was someone who had made a great sacrifice to come here, to be studied, to be examined. And yet she was doing it with grace. "I'm glad you came," Dr. Jared said, his voice almost a whisper. "I think we all are. You've already changed so many lives." Celia looked down for a moment, her expression unreadable. "I hope so," she said quietly, "but sometimes I wonder if it's enough. I wonder if I'll ever truly belong here." Dr. Jared reached out, gently placing a hand on her arm. "You do belong here," he said. "You're not just a subject of study. You're a person. And I think you've made a difference." Celia looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of his words hanging between them. She felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. There was something about Dr. Jared, something that made her feel understood, even in the midst of everything that was so strange and new. Their eyes locked, and for the first time, Celia felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just respect anymore. It was something deeper. She could feel the chemistry between them, an invisible thread that seemed to pull them closer together. Dr. Jared, too, felt the pull. He had spent so much time focused on the science, on the mission, that he had almost forgotten what it was like to feel this way. But now, standing in front of Celia, he felt a connection he couldn't ignore. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. It was the way she carried herself, the way she spoke, the way she made him feel like he wasn't just a scientist, but a person. Before he could stop himself, he found himself leaning in slightly. "Zelia, But he stopped, suddenly unsure. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable, not after everything she had shared. Zelia smiled, her eyes softening. "It's okay," she said gently. "I feel it too." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt charged, full of unspoken words and feelings. It wasn't just the milk that had brought them together. It was something deeper, something more personal. "Maybe," Zelia said after a long pause. "This wasn't just about the milk, was it?" Dr. Jared shook his head, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "No," he said quietly. "It wasn't." Zelia's smile grew, and for the first time, she felt a sense of belonging in a place so far from home. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that this moment, this connection, was real. As the evening wore on, they talked. Not about science or experiments, but about their lives, their hopes, and their dreams. They shared stories of their worlds, Zelia of the stars and her people, and Dr. Jared of Earth and his own life. Slowly, the walls that had once stood between them began to crumble. And in that quiet moment, neither of them knew where this new connection would take them. But one thing was clear: something had begun, something neither had expected. And it was only just starting. A question of morality. As the days passed, the relationship between Celia and Dr. Jared grew more complicated. The attraction between them was undeniable, but so were the challenges. They both knew that their feelings were growing, but there was something they couldn't ignore: the question of morality. Zelia had come to Earth with the intention of sharing her knowledge, her gifts, with humanity. Her people had always used their abilities for good, to heal, to protect. But now, as the humans were getting more and more fascinated by her milk, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were treating it as a mere tool, something to be studied, to be used. It made her uncomfortable, and it made her question what she had done by offering it in the first place. Dr. Jared, too, began to feel uneasy. He had always been driven by science and discovery, but as he spent more time with Celia, he started to see things differently. He had never considered how deeply personal this milk was to her. To him, it was an incredible breakthrough, something that could change the future of medicine. But to her, it was a part of who she was, a part of her identity, her culture. One evening, after another round of tests on Celia's milk, Dr. Jared found himself in the lab, staring at the data on his screen. The milk had shown even more remarkable properties than they had expected. It healed wounds faster, boosted energy levels, and even seemed to slow down the aging process. The potential was limitless, but as he looked at the numbers, a knot twisted in his stomach. Was it right to keep studying it like this? Was he using Celia? The sound of a knock at the door pulled him out of his thoughts. He turned to see Celia standing there, her eyes unreadable. "Dr. Jared," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I need to speak with you." He nodded, his heart racing. He had a feeling he knew where this was going. "Of course. Please come in." Celia entered the room, her presence filling the space. She was still as graceful and beautiful as ever, but there was something different about her now. There was a seriousness in her eyes, a heaviness that hadn't been there before. "I've been thinking," she began, "about the tests, about what we've been doing. I agreed to share my milk with you, to help your people. But now, I wonder if I made a mistake." Dr. Jared's stomach tightened. "Celia, I don't think you made a mistake. You've done something incredible. You've helped so many people already." She shook her head, her silver hair glinting in the light. "It's not that simple. You don't understand what it means to me. My milk isn't just a medicine. It's part of who I am. And yet, I see you all using it like a commodity, something to be studied, something to be replicated. I'm not just a scientist to you. I'm a tool. And that's hard for me to accept." Dr. Jared opened his mouth to protest, but the words didn't come. Deep down, he knew she was right. They had treated her gift as if it were just another scientific discovery. He had been so focused on the potential of her milk that he hadn't fully considered how she might feel about it. And now, seeing the sadness in her eyes, he realized just how much he had taken for granted. "I'm sorry, Celia," he said quietly. "I never meant to make you feel that way. I got so caught up in the science that I forgot you're a person, not just a subject." Celia took a deep breath, her expression softening. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me. I can see how much you care, but I need you to understand something. This gift, it's not just about healing or medicine. It's a part of my culture, my people. It's sacred, and I'm not sure it's right to keep giving it to you like this." Dr. Jared walked over to her, his heart aching. "I understand. I should have been more careful. I've been so focused on what we could learn that I never stopped to think about what you might be giving up." Celia met his gaze, her eyes filled with emotion. "I'm not angry. I just need time to think. I need to decide if this is what I truly want. If I want to continue helping your people, or if I should go back to my planet." Dr. Jared felt his heart sink. He had never imagined that this would happen. He had always seen himself as a scientist first. But now, with Celia standing before him, he realized that he cared about her as a person. He didn't want her to leave, but he understood that he couldn't make her stay. "I respect your decision, Celia," he said quietly. "Take all the time you need. We'll stop the tests. We'll find another way to help your people, if that's what you want." Celia nodded, her eyes softening. "Thank you, Dr. Jared. I appreciate your understanding. It's just hard. I never thought I'd have to make this choice." Dr. Jared looked at her, a mixture of guilt and admiration in his heart. He didn't know what the future held for them, but he knew one thing for sure. The moral question wasn't just about the science. It was about respecting Celia's humanity. "I hope you'll stay," he said softly, "not just because of the science, but because you belong here. You're more than just a gift. You're a person, and we care about you." Celia's eyes flickered with something. Hope, maybe. "Thank you, Dr. Jared. That means more than you know." As she left the lab, Dr. Jared stood there, lost in thought. He knew that this was only the beginning of a much bigger conversation. The science would continue, but the question of morality was one that would stay with him and Celia for a long time. A moment of understanding. The days after Xelia's conversation with Dr. Jared were filled with uncertainty. Both of them had been thinking deeply about what had happened, but there was no clear answer. The question of morality still hung over them like a heavy cloud. Xelia needed time to decide whether she could continue sharing her milk with the humans, and Dr. Jared needed to find a way to show her that he respected her choice. Xelia spent much of her time alone in her quarters, reflecting on everything. She knew that her decision was not an easy one, but she also understood the importance of her gift. Her people had always used their abilities for the greater good, but now she had to decide if she wanted to continue that tradition with humans. Could they be trusted with such power? Could she truly help them without losing a part of herself? Meanwhile, Dr. Jared found himself torn. He had been so focused on the science of it all that he hadn't fully considered how it might affect Celia. He had been excited about the possibilities, but now, with the weight of her words on his shoulders, he realized that there was more at stake than just the experiments. He had to find a way to show her that she was not just a subject to be studied, but a person with her own rights and feelings. One evening, after a long day of tests and research, Dr. Jared found himself standing outside Celia's door. He had spent hours thinking about what to say, but words seemed so small compared to the emotions he felt. He wanted to apologize, but more than that, he wanted to show her that he understood. He knocked softly on the door. A moment later, Celia's voice came from inside. "Come in." He opened the door slowly and stepped inside. Celia was sitting by the window, looking out at the stars. Her long silver hair glowed in the soft light of the room. She looked up when he entered, her expression calm but guarded. "Dr. Jared," she said softly, "what brings you here?" He took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I realize now that I wasn't being fair to you. I was so focused on the science, on the potential of your gift, that I didn't consider how it might make you feel. I'm sorry for that." Celia's eyes softened, but she didn't respond right away. Instead, she stood up and walked over to him. "I've been thinking too," she said quietly, "and I've come to understand something." Dr. Jared looked at her, confused. "What's that?" "I've been so focused on what I could give, on how my gift might help your people," she said, her voice thoughtful. "But I never stopped to think about how I might feel in all of this. I never stopped to think about how I might lose a part of myself in the process." Dr. Jared nodded, feeling a deep sense of guilt. "I understand. I didn't want you to feel like you were losing something. I just wanted to help. But I see now that it's not just about the science. It's about you. It's about respecting what you're offering, not just taking it for granted." Celia smiled faintly, her eyes brightening. "That's exactly it," she said. "I need to feel like my gift is being treated with respect, not like it's just something to be studied. It's a part of me, a part of my people, and I want to share it with humanity, but I need to know that it's being appreciated for what it truly is." Dr. Jared reached out, gently taking her hand. "I promise you, Celia, we'll do better. We'll respect your gift, and we'll respect you. You're not just a scientist to us, or an experiment. You're a person, and I care about you." Celia's heart skipped a beat as she looked into his eyes. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just a tool to be used. She felt seen, truly seen, for who she was, not just as an alien, but as a person with her own feelings and emotions. "I believe you," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "I believe that you truly understand now, and that means a lot to me." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other's gaze, the unspoken connection between them growing stronger. It was more than just science now. It was about trust, respect, and understanding. It was about a deeper bond that neither of them had expected, but that both of them were beginning to realize was real. "I want to continue helping your people," Celia said after a while, her voice steady. "But I want to do it on my terms. I want to make sure that my gift is being treated with care. and I want to make sure that I'm not losing myself in the process." Dr. Jared nodded, his heart filled with relief. "You have my word, Celia. We'll work together to make sure that happens. No one will treat your gift as anything less than what it is, a beautiful part of you. I'll make sure of that." Zelia smiled, and for the first time in days, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had come to Earth with a purpose, but now, for the first time, she felt like she was in control of her own path. She could help the humans, but she could do it in a way that honored herself and her people. "Thank you, Dr. Jared," she said, her voice full of warmth. "Thank you for understanding." Dr. Jared smiled back, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. "You don't have to thank me, Zelia. I'm just glad we understand each other now." They stood there for a moment, the silence between them comfortable, as they both realized that this was a new beginning. They still had a long way to go, but for the first time, they knew they were on the same page. And that made all the difference. Cultural sharing. The days following their conversation were filled with a new sense of understanding. Dr. Jared and Celia had made peace with each other's concerns, and the air between them felt lighter. But even as they grew closer, there was something important still missing, a deeper connection that could only come through sharing more than just words. Zelia had already shared her gift, her milk, with humanity, but there was so much more about her world and her culture that she hadn't yet revealed. The humans had learned a lot from her biologically, but there was more to her than just her body. And Celia knew that for her to truly feel a sense of belonging, she needed to share her culture. She needed to show Dr. Jared and the humans what her people were really about. One evening, as the stars outside the facility began to shine brightly, Celia approached Dr. Jared. She had an idea, one that had been growing in her mind ever since they had started talking more deeply. "Dr. Jared," Celia said, her voice calm but full of purpose, "I think it's time I share more with you. Not just the science, but who I am, where I come from." Dr. Jared looked up, surprised but intrigued. "What do you mean?" Zelia smiled. "I shared my gift, my knowledge. But there is more, so much more about my people, our way of life, our traditions. I think it's time you understood that part of me too." Dr. Jared's eyes lit up. He had always been fascinated by the scientific side of things, but the idea of learning about Celia's culture, her home, was something entirely different. He realized that understanding her culture would help him see her in a whole new light, more than just a subject, but as a person with a rich history and background. "I would love that," Dr. Jared said eagerly. "I think it's important for me to understand who you are outside of just what you can do scientifically." Zelia nodded, pleased with his response. "There is something I can show you. I come from a planet called Zolaris. It's very different from Earth. The people there live in harmony with nature. We believe in balance, in living with the world, not against it." She took a step closer, her voice softening as she continued. "One of the most important traditions on Zolaris is the Festival of Light. It's a time when all the people come together to celebrate the stars, the source of life for our world. We believe that the stars guide us, that they protect us." Dr. Jared was listening intently, completely captivated by her words. "The Festival of Light sounds beautiful. Tell me more." Zelia smiled. "It's not just a celebration. It's a way of connecting with each other and with the stars. We wear special clothing made from materials that reflect the light of the stars. We dance, sing, and share stories. It's a time for reflection, for coming together as a community." Dr. Jared was fascinated. "That sounds so different from anything we have here on Earth. But I can see why it's so important to you." Zelia's eyes shone as she continued. "It is. It's our way of showing gratitude for the stars, for the life they give us. We also have a custom of sharing food during the festival. The food we eat is grown in harmony with nature, and it's meant to nourish both the body and the spirit." Dr. Jared nodded, his mind racing with questions. He wanted to know more about her people, their customs, their way of life. But he knew that this was just the beginning. There was so much more to learn. Zelia noticed his curiosity and smiled. If you would like, I can show you a bit of the Festival of Light. We can't have the full celebration here, but I can share a small part of it with you. Dr. Jared was thrilled. Yes, I'd love that. It would mean a lot to me to experience something from your world. The next evening, Celia prepared a small part of the festival for Dr. Jared. She dressed in a simple, flowing garment made of soft, shimmering material that seemed to catch the light in a way that reminded him of the stars. She had brought with her a small, glowing orb, a symbol of the light that her people revered. As they stood together in the quiet of the lab, Celia held the orb in her hands, her fingers tracing its glowing surface. "This is called the Starstone," she explained. "It's said to carry the energy of the stars. We use it to guide us during the festival, to help us find our way and remember our connection to the universe." Dr. Jared watched, amazed by the soft glow of the orb and the reverence in Celia's eyes. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "I can see why this is so important to you." Celia smiled, a warmth in her gaze. "Thank you for understanding. I wanted to share this with you, to show you that there is more to me than just the science. There is a whole world inside me, a world that I hope you can one day understand." Dr. Jared nodded, feeling deeply moved. "I do understand, Celia, and I want to know more. I want to learn about your world, your people, and everything that makes you who you are." Celia smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time since coming to Earth, she felt like she wasn't just a stranger. She wasn't just a being from another world. She was someone who had a rich history, a culture worth sharing, and a future worth exploring. As they sat together, the soft glow of the starstone between them, Celia knew that she had made the right choice. She had shared a piece of herself, her culture, and it had brought her closer to Dr. Jared. And perhaps in time, it would help the humans understand her people better too. For the first time since coming to Earth, Celia felt like she belonged. A new future. The days that followed were filled with new hope. Celia and Dr. Jared had come a long way since their first meeting. They had moved from simply working together to building a deep bond based on trust, respect, and understanding. As they continued to learn from each other, both of them felt a sense of purpose that had been missing before. Celia had shown Dr. Jared a glimpse into her world, sharing her culture, her traditions, and her people's way of life. The Starstone, the Festival of Light, and the wisdom of her people all painted a picture of a world far different from Earth. It was a world full of peace, balance, and harmony with nature. Dr. Jared, in turn, shared his own experiences, his knowledge, and his dreams for the future. Slowly but surely, they were creating a new path together. But even as they grew closer, Celia knew that there was still more to consider. Her gift, her milk, had been accepted by the humans, but it had also brought with it challenges and questions. She had made the decision to share it, but now she was starting to think about what that meant for her future. What would it mean for her people? What would it mean for the future of humans and aliens alike? One evening, after another long day of research, Dr. Jared and Celia found themselves standing by the window in her quarters. The stars outside were bright and clear, and for a moment, they both just stared out at the vastness of the universe. It was a quiet moment, but there was a lot left unspoken between them. Celia broke the silence first. "Dr. Jared, I've been thinking a lot about what comes next, about the future." Dr. Jared turned to her, his expression gentle. "What do you mean?" Celia took a deep breath. "I shared so much with you already, my culture, my gift. But I know that there are still many challenges ahead. There are people who don't understand, who fear what's different. There are still questions about what my gift really means for humans, for my people, for us both." Dr. Jared nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. "I know. There's still a lot of work to do. We're still learning, still figuring out how to make all of this work. But I believe that we're on the right path." Celia looked out at the stars again, her thoughts racing. "I've been thinking about that too, and about how I can be a part of that future. I came here to share my gift, to help. But I don't want to lose myself in the process. I don't want to be just a tool, just a source of milk or knowledge. I want to help, yes, but I also want to know that I'm doing it in a way that respects who I am, who my people are. Dr. Jared's heart went out to her. Xelia, you're not just a tool. You are a person, a unique individual with so much to offer. And I'll do everything I can to make sure that you're not lost in this process. Together, we can figure out how to move forward, how to use your gift for the benefit of both your people and mine, without losing sight of who you are. Xelia smiled, feeling the weight of his words sink in. For the first time, she felt truly seen. She wasn't just a visitor from another planet anymore. She wasn't just a strange alien with a unique gift. She was Celia, a person with hopes, dreams, and a future that was hers to shape. I want to help humans, Celia said softly, but I want it to be on my terms, and I want to make sure that it's done in a way that honors both our cultures. There's so much we can learn from each other. Dr. Jared stepped closer, his voice filled with conviction. We can do that. We can create a future where humans and aliens can work together, where both sides are respected. We can build something new, something that helps both of us. Xelia's eyes shone with hope. And you're right, Dr. Jared. There's so much we can do together. We can share knowledge, share our cultures, and build a future that is better for both of our worlds. I've learned so much already. I've learned that humanity is capable of great things, and I believe that we can work together to create something truly amazing. The two of them stood there, side by side, looking out at the stars. It wasn't just about science anymore. It wasn't just about the gift that Celia had shared. It was about the bond they had formed, the connection they had made. It was about the future they were both starting to imagine, one that was full of hope, understanding, and cooperation. As the night grew darker, Celia turned to Dr. Jared with a small smile. I think we've only just begun. Dr. Jared smiled back, feeling a surge of excitement. Yes, we have. And I'm ready to see where this new future takes us. Together, they looked out at the stars, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. With the power of their shared understanding and respect, they were ready to build a future that would bridge the gap between their worlds, a future that was built on trust, cooperation, and the belief that there was always room for growth. And with that, the future didn't seem so far away anymore.